Hey everyone, and welcome to Sketching with Sarah. I'm Sarah, and this is the finale of my Blob Animal Art Challenge series. If you haven't seen my other videos in this series, I highly recommend you go check those out before or after this one. I have a convenient link in my description box that will bring you straight to a playlist of them if you're interested. To give you a bit of context, I've been making these random blobs with watercolor and creating animals in them. And in my first part of this series, I took a couple of those animals and had them interacting in some way to create a new piece of art. Now, I didn't have any more watercolor paper to continue that in every single part after that, so I just didn't. Then last week, I went through my pile of other different types of paper, and I found a watercolor sheet among them. So I thought to make up for it, I would try to take a blob from each part I missed, and have them all in one illustration to wrap up this series that I clearly milked for way too long. I first went ahead and picked my favorite blob from each part of the series and drew them all on one sheet to start imagining how I can have them together in one drawing. I used watercolor pencil and some water brush pens to get the general blob down, and I should mention that this paper is really not intended to have any kind of water on it. I usually use this pad of paper to take notes or to jot reminders down for myself on my desk, but since I wanted to refer to my sketchbook blobs and have a separate sheet of the ones that I'm working with, I figured I might as well use this pad of paper on my desk. I realized very quickly that I would have to be very gentle with my water application because, as you can see, this paper is just too thin and crinkly to hold any moisture for that long. I ended up having to put it under a stack of magazines for a while, and even then it didn't flatten it all the way, but at least it was enough to work with it. So then I went in and doodled the animals back into the blobs with some ink pens until I had all the blobs I'm going to work with all on one page. After having all the animals in one spot, I started to thumbnail a composition for these critters. I thought about having the sloth blob high up in a tree and the snail coming down that tree trunk with the beaver at the edge of the water and an otter swimming in it. That way it would have a nice background, midground, and foreground. This was the drawing I came up with in part 1 from those blobs, and for this one I want to keep it in the same similar simple style as much as possible, but we'll see how true I stuck to that by the end of this drawing. Once I was alright with how they were laid out in the thumbnail sketch, I cut the water paper to the right proportions and started sketching the composition onto it. I transferred the composition with a blue watercolor pencil. I chose blue because I knew I wanted the animals to be a more warm neutral color. And since the watercolors I have are very saturated, I figured having the blue as a base to it would help neutralize the colors even further. Now, last minute, I did decide to cut out the sloth from the drawing because I felt like he was just too far away, and I realized I wanted to go for more of an intimate scene with these blobs rather than just some background scene with blobs here and there. If I were to spend more time in the thumbnail stage, I could have definitely came up with something to have the sloth bigger and maybe closer to the action, but when I started realizing the sloth wasn't working, I had already sketched it onto the page and everything, so I feel like the best solution for this was to just chop him out. If I had more time and maybe a few more days to film and play with it, I know I could have found a solution to include him, but hey, I can always do that in the future. Just because I don't have him in this one doesn't mean I can't make another drawing with him in it. After I transferred my composition, I started layering the warm tones on the animals to build up some shading. Once I got all the basic washes down, I started to layer in my colored pencil to sharpen the lines and add more definition to the blob animals. Something I love about colored pencils is that it's very much like watercolor in that you really do have to go in layer by layer gradually, but I do think that I like colored pencil more because there's no drying time. So for impatient people like me, that is a huge plus. Once I had most of the shading on the animals, I started adding grass here and there and added a little tree and roots for the snail to be climbing over to talk to the beaver blob. I wanted to say real quick that I do apologize for the most inconsistent lighting ever. I started this drawing in daylight and then it got dark, so I had to move into artificial lighting. So I had to adjust as I went. So this was definitely a learning experience for me. If I didn't procrastinate or anything, I could do this over the span of a few days. but I just didn't have that much daylight days before today's upload. Also, someday I'm hoping to get some kind of lighting setup that's good enough for me to set up once and just be done with it for all times of the day. But until then, I'm going to try my best and maybe plan better so I don't do everything in one day. Here, I'm adding random grass blades one by one to fill in the back of the drawing. I feel like the background kind of falls flat. It's just so saturated and I didn't really have a lot of depth and variation in the shading in there. So I think that's something I can definitely work on for the next time. I might do some grass studies in the meantime and work on getting different variations of shading into the grass and not just having the shapes, if that makes sense. Like, I really didn't do very much shading at all. They're kind of just there. Finally, I added some last minute dab pebbles and flowy line texture in the water. Overall, I think this was a really cute drawing that came out of this series, and I don't think I would have created it without going through these videos. So there you have it for the final finale of my Blob Animal Art Challenge series. I'm really proud of what I created for this series, and it was really nice to take a moment to do something silly and simple like this. For the illustrations I normally do, I rely on references and studies pretty often, and what I really loved about this challenge is just working with what's in front of you. There was a lot of improvising and reacting to the mark you made before to the next, and I think that's what art challenges are all about. They're supposed to challenge you and maybe take you outside of your comfort zone just to see what you can come up with. I find that whenever I have art block or just don't know what to draw or I'm not feeling creative at a certain time, doing these simple art challenges can really get you in the flow of it again and inspire you to create something else. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more art-related content. I upload a new video every single Friday, and I would love to have you come along with me and get creative. If you've made it this far, leave a comment to let me know what animal is your favorite from the Blob series and why. I would love to hear what you guys think. If you're curious to know what supplies I used at any point in this video, I have some affiliate links in my description if you're interested. My favorite supplies I used in this video were definitely my sketchbook. This is definitely my go-to sketchbook whenever I need a new one because it's mixed media, a spiral bound, so you don't have to lay it flat or anything, it just fits right in your lap, and you can customize the cover, which may or may not be a video for the future. So if you want to be art supplies twins, make sure you check out those links below. It would really help me out. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.